Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Azure Lowlands. A warm welcome to everybody here in the studio, and of course, everybody on the live stream who's watching or listening. So today I'm here together again with one of my favorite co-hosts, Callum. So Callum, maybe quickly want to say hello before we go over to our special guest of today.
Yeah, hello. This is the Infrastructure as Code panel. I know nothing about infrastructure as code. That's a lie, but very little. And thankfully, we have two experts here, so you can help us, Katrin and Eric. Sorry. Would you like to introduce yourselves and tell us a fun fact about you as well?
Yes, a fun fact about me as well. Well, actually, I'm not an expert in IEC because I only know a limited scale of IEC, but I love IEC, so I really love that stuff. And for the rest, yeah, I'm a .NET developer, and I love my job. I'm a bit freak about my job, as anybody else in this job, I think. So that's about it.
.NET rocks. Yep. I love .NET.
Yeah, and I'm Eric, based in Germany, MVP for Azure and Cloud Data Center Management. And a fun fact about me, that's a very good question. Maybe what I do, what is most fun is riding my quad around the city where I live, which is quite fun.
Well, perfect. Great to have you here. So let's start first. Like, what is infrastructure as code? Can you explain it to us?
Well, literally, you treat your infrastructure as code. So you provide a way that you can write it, and all the goodies about writing software, such as peer review and all that stuff, you can apply it. Further on, you have a backup of your infrastructure. You can spin it up right away. And moreover, if you have a nice configuration, you can also extend it, and you can spin up any environment you want. I think these are the main things, advantages about IEC, and I do not want to be too negative, but things with manual deployment, such as something goes wrong in the heat of the moment, you don't have it. It's very, very predictable, and that's a very good way. Yeah.
And it's a good way to document things, because I guess the main issue with all the cloud platforms is they all come with this fancy portal. And also most of the sellers are going in and tell you about this click cloud approach,
yeah, yes,
where you could just go and go in there, click there, wow, cool, now you're on the cloud. But nobody ever understands what they have done, and nobody ever keeps track of it, and we all know that documentation never works for people. And having infrastructure as code, so really writing down what do you want to have configured is documentation, backup, as you just mentioned, at the same time. That's pretty good.
So with IAC, what can I configure?
Well, you can, I think, merely everything. You can configure your control plane. You can also configure your data plane. You don't see that often, but it is possible. And yeah, in fact, you can reproduce an environment at the moment as you want it to be.
So anything in Azure right now,
yes.
I can create as infrastructure
Maybe
as code.
that's a nuance. When we are talking about infrastructure, we are referring to cloud of infrastructure, right? So that's an important nuance, yeah.
In the end, the main fact is that everything we do in the cloud runs through an API. And as long as we can wrap something around that API call and call it infrastructure as code, or however you want to call it, you can configure it. And as soon as you have infrastructure, then you can also do the configuration as code. We've done this for quite a while with scripts running in servers. Now, when we talk about platform services, I still can go ahead and configure certain things. So that's just keep on going. And you can really extend that into identity as code, security as code. So there are so many things that all benefit from the same things. Have a documentation, have a backup, know what has happened. And especially the thing that you just mentioned earlier is about the peer review. Whoever experienced on Monday morning something isn't working and you don't know why, there you can have a look. You see who did the change on Friday night. And now you can even see what exactly they changed, and you might be even able to roll it back, even though they are on vacation or whatever.
And there are several different tools out there. Terraform, name a few. What is something companies should consider when they're looking into the different tools that are in the market today?
That's a good one. I think the first one regarding tools is there are many tools, and if you have a tool in your company and it is good enough for the company and enough people know it, then it's a good one. Another one is, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to scripting as CLI and PowerShell, where you define your commands, or do you prefer just to declare your infrastructure? And I think another one is, in which environment are you working? Are you working in a multi-cloud environment? Because if you are working in a multi-cloud environment, then not all tools can be used. Or are you working in a dedicated environment? So I think these are some. And do you have any others? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. So really think about where are your people coming from, what are they comfortable with. Like if you have a whole bunch of developers that tries to get into infrastructure as code, they might, for example, feel more comfortable with Pulumi because it's more dev related. If you try to have it in an easier writing form, maybe Terraform is awesome. One thing that I really would put into the decision matrix there is day zero supportability, because there are a lot of features out there and a lot of tools out there, and for sure the platform itself will always help you to have day zero, there's a new feature, we get it running and we are able to do it. Some third-party tools, it's always the question, how good are they integrated with Microsoft in that case, for example? Then they are maybe doing pretty good. But even for Terraform, for example, there are some things you just cannot configure. And then you start to integrate like JSON, which is the native language to Microsoft. And so that's also something you should take into consideration.
Maybe just one other one is, I think, Terraform and the state files. Isn't it stated in Terraform, or is it Pulumi somewhere? One of these tools has the state files within their own environment. So if you don't like that, then you should not use these tools.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That's also a thing. Especially the state files, because they can also kind of keep secrets, depending on what like compliance requirements you have to fulfill. Yes. That might also be a decision criteria. Yeah.
So you've mentioned there are a number of third-party tools, Pulumi, Terraform, etc. And there's some reasons when and why you wouldn't. Availability on day zero is a great point. So natively in Azure, we have ARM, which is their templating language, and AWS, if I'm allowed to say that here, has CloudFormation, which obviously is their own thing. And meaning on day zero of any new product, it should be available and configurable via those languages. Equally, I know in the Azure portal, I can, click cloud and create a resource and then actually download the ARM template for that, which obviously gives me a bit of a leg up, not necessarily needing to know how to start from scratch. I've got something to help me along the way there.
But now we come to the difficult point. Not all the preview features are automatically in the portal. So some of them start with the CLI and start with the API being available, and then later on they start creating the proper portal experience, or they start with a very rare, it's like just click next, and you cannot configure it that much. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a great feature that you can go in there, download it, and then you can see, or even if you, over time you created a larger environment, you can just download it and have a look. And there's even, like for Terraform in the meantime, there's an import mechanism that you can go into the Azure portal or in the Azure services and say, hey, import this whole stuff and write it down as Terraform.
Okay.
So that you can start managing existing resources.
Oh, that's good. So for a beginner wanting to get started with infrastructure as code and not knowing where to begin, going to one of these tools and either, downloading, exporting your existing configuration would be a great place to start, because otherwise you risk missing something or...
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like one of the big things that you might do when you start. You will go into a portal and click something, because that's easy and that's a low-hanging fruit. And it's just working. And to be honest, they did a good job on most of those portals. And as soon as you start trying to take this over in infrastructure as code, you will run your code against it, and you will see what you missed, that you forgot about a configuration, that it's about to change something that you don't want to be changed. So you will constantly evolve your own code, and then you get better with that. And so that's how it normally works.
So maybe a question for Katrien. So how do you ensure a proper adoption of infrastructure as code?
I don't think I get your question.
Like, how would you, well, maybe Eric,
Well,
you want to jump
Eric,
in? Yeah.
maybe
Like,
Eric.
how would
I
you,
think the question is really like, when you start doing infrastructure as code and people still have access to the portal, and you have like, you are doing everything as code, but your colleagues are clicking around the portal. How do you make sure that everybody sticks to the rules? Let's say it like that.
Well, first of all, there are some ways you can limit access to the portal, for instance, and role-based access control and stuff like this. This is one way to assess. And another one is, in case you have not figured that out or not arranged this, with IEC you can also compare your state with as it is actually, and then you can also see what has happened. So, but yeah, in fact, it is a very difficult step because, yeah, we really like to click our way around and it is easy and access is immediately. So we need to be aware that when we do this, that our code does not reflect, in fact, the desired state anymore. So, yeah, it is a learning curve, and people have to get used to it.
Yeah, and I think from an adoption perspective, like how do you get people there? It all starts with training, because understanding the benefits. So why should I do that? And I can talk about myself. Like, I don't know, 5 years ago, if anyone would have told me that I will have a Visual Studio on my laptop, I would have started laughing and running away. And nowadays, without VS Code, I couldn't work. And that has changed a lot. But because I understood the benefits, I see how it's helping me to kind of keep track of what I'm doing. And I think so learning, educating is one of the big parts of it. And then it's absolutely okay to start an environment in the portal. And so that's what I see with many of my clients is we start out in test environments, dev environments with portal access because it's easier and faster to click something together, try it out, figure it out, maybe remove it, going back and forth. But then at some point when you move into a pre-prod stage or prod stage, you should switch to the proper methods. That's also where you want to have all the security in and the governance in and so on. So and that's then the part where you limit the access to the portal and where you get people being used to use the right infrastructure as code tools.
So from a process point of view, it's just code, so it goes through peer review and code review, I'm guessing. Whose responsibility is the code for the infrastructure? Now, this is a big question because
it's you, I would say.
I'm sure everyone will shift blame here as well. I, as a let's say a .NET developer that doesn't go near infrastructure, why should I have the responsibility, or maybe responsibility is the wrong word? Why should I be? Why should I have the onus of choosing exactly how my resources are spec'd out, etc., when I don't necessarily know Azure? Surely that requires an infrastructure person, but equally, the infrastructure person doesn't necessarily know exactly what I want provisioned. Where does that line fall?
Should I say the buzzword? It's called DevOps.
DevOps, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on your scenario. Just let me give you a brief example. I have a client, they are doing websites. And they have a lot of website developers or designers, or however you would call those people these days, that normally are just interested in how pretty the website is. But they want to be able to easily spin up a site, show it to the customer, and break it down after 2 hours. If I always have to wait for an infrastructure guy to deploy me a web service or a server, they're going to kill me. That's not happening. So for them, it could then also be that you give them like the code that they can use. It's prepared, it's pre-approved, it's pre-checked, but they get the ability to execute it and to use it. And that's a little bit where then this DevOps, and maybe you want to jump in on that, makes sense to bring the people that know things together and everybody puts in what they do best and know best.
Yeah. I fully agree because it reminded me a bit
Mike?
about the
Mike?
old world. I'm sorry, the mic. I forgot about it. My first impulse was, oh yeah, this question sounds like the old-fashioned world where you had the devs and you had the ops. This isn't the case anymore, and yeah, I agree, some people know more about certain things than others, but you cannot say it is not my responsibility.
I was hesitant to use the word responsibility for that exact reason. It's not a case of passing responsibility onto someone else, going, this has nothing to do with me, but in every organization, somewhere, someone's responsible for a budget or wants control over those sorts of things. You can quite easily see how somebody might just copy some configuration from somewhere without realizing the implications, and it would then deploy several apps. Where are the safeguards for that sort of thing?
And I think that's exactly what you say, just copying things and doing it. I've experienced it where people really spent 10,000 euros on something because they didn't see that there was another number in where they copied it, and they didn't have one copy of it, but they had 10. So lessons learned from that. But that's what I meant a bit earlier, especially when you, once again, the typical consultant answer, it depends. It depends on what you want to achieve.
We heard that more often today.
Yeah, sorry for that. But one thing that I try to do, especially with clients that are like in a regulated environment, is really to go through and say, hey, the infrastructure as code is the solution to a lot of your problems. Because when people go into the portal and you write down in a white paper how they should configure things, we all know they will never do. I click differently than you click, and so on. But if I write it down, and there is a team, and that might be an infrastructure guy, and a security girl, and I don't know what, and we together build a module that is the perfect fit, that fits all our regulations, that has the naming convention in it, that has, I don't know, all the governance, tagging, cost structures in it. And then I give it to the people that really want to use it and say, you can use it as this or nothing. That's working quite well because people, as you mentioned, I'm a developer. I don't want to deal with infrastructure, but I also don't want to wait on the infrastructure guy. Yeah. So infrastructure as code can be really the solution for the problems that we're all making out of it.
Yeah, and regarding spending money, for instance, I know some tools have a preview mode, and so you can actually assess what will happen without actually deploying your stuff. And another way you can work around this thing is you can manage budgets, and you can say, hey, this team is responsible, and you have that budget, and once you are over that budget, it's done. So with this, you can also make people aware about the fact that it actually costs what you're deploying. It's very easy, but it is not cheap. Yeah.
Provisioning infrastructure sounds super easy. What about deprovisioning? And again, is that something we want to be doing programmatically, or is this really something that there's still going to be a level of manual input in this whole process?
Maybe the first question is, why would you ever deprovision something? Or we're all used to create the VM, keep it running for a lifetime, and then it's a problem of the next admin that comes after me.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, deprovisioning is a challenging one. On the one hand side, it's absolutely a thing of infrastructure as code. So if I remove something from my code, good tools, and that's the thing, good tools, will start taking care of that removal and will make sure to remove those things. On the other side, in the clouds, and that's not just Azure, that's also when you have a look into AWS and Google, it's pretty much the same. You have dependencies that are sometimes that hard that you cannot just remove things, that you have to like alter 2-3 other things before you can remove it, and then you can switch things back. And that's really one of the limitations where you, at some point, you will figure a situation where you cannot do it in infrastructure as code only. So deprovisioning can be a hassle, at least it's my experience. But it should be in the code, obviously, because you need to adapt to what you are changing there. Yeah.
So speaking of change, you were saying earlier, like 5 years ago, if somebody would tell you, you would laugh. Now we are 5 years. Where do you think you're going to be in 5 or 10 years from now? Like, how does the future look like?
I don't want to answer this question.
Are you going to laugh at yourself back then?
I hope
no,
in 5 years...
How has it changed for you the way you work?
Yeah,
Let's state it that way.
5 years we have AI and I can sit on the beach in Bali and just watch the AI doing my work.
That's the spirit.
No, I think we will never get rid of the traditional things. And really, without joking, but AI will be a big push because it makes easier for people to adapt to those things. If you have a look and I ask you, hey, can you write me a bicep file from scratch? I give you a blank canvas and start writing. Nobody wants that. People go into any repo and copy out things and start reusing things. And to be honest, that's what the AI is doing. They take modules that we know how they work and put them in and help you to accelerate with that. So I think that is obviously a thing where in 5 years nobody will question it anymore. It will be a standard. So we will be telling the Visual Studio, I need a I need a Terraform file to create X, Y, Z, and it's just popping up and it's working. I still believe that everything will be in code. Because that's the way how to manage it, how to model it, and that's the way how all the clouds are built. The clouds are built on APIs, and APIs take text input. That's the easiest way to explain how an API works. And so that's the route that we're going. On the same time, we see the the cloud providers building more and more portals to make it easier to interact. So I guess it will be always a up and down on both sides, and I don't think that it changes in the next 5 years.
Is there ever going to be a day where we have a true cloud agnostic tool for infrastructure as code? Because we mentioned provider specific things. We've mentioned Terraform having, doing most things well, but more specific on newer features it can't do. Should we be investing in one tool that rules them all, or is it better to say, look, okay, if we're tied to a specific infrastructure, let's stick with that?
It's a difficult one. I don't have any experience with multi-cloud tools, that's for sure. I only know some stories of my colleagues, and I hear that it is not so easy to switch from one cloud provider to another. You need to do some things in your code. I have most experience with Bicep, and Bicep is fully dedicated in Azure, with Azure. And as far as I know, up till now, there are no plans to extend it. And I think this is a very good decision because the product is very, very nice, and everything which is available, also preview, by the way, you can use it straight away. So I think, in my opinion, it is better to really focus on something and do it very well. And if you need something else, choose another tool which does exactly the same thing for that respect.
It feels like the age-old argument of creating abstractions in our applications, abstracting our database away because we might want to swap it out at some point. And, we must use Terraform because we might want to swap to AWS at some point, is fine, but it will become a limiter for you at some point as well.
Yeah, that's really the thing. So what is the case that we are talking about? Because for the application layer, we have those tools already. We have Dapper, for example, which is a great thing to be able to replace a caching tool with another caching tool, and you don't change your code. For infrastructures, will always be a trouble because you have so much dependencies. It's not just a connection string; it's a network, and the network has rules and IP ranges and whatever. So when we talk about traditional infrastructure, there's so much dependency that I think it's hard to get the one fits all and the one who rules them all tool. And at the same time, coming back to the day zero support, so it would have to be that the 3 big players, or maybe 4 or 5 big players, when we count in Google and IBM and whatever, that they sit on one table and say we want to do that together. And I have my doubts about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Thank you both for joining us. This has been a really interesting look at infrastructure as code. I've certainly learned something.
Oh, definitely.
Just quickly before we head off, both of you've done your sessions for the day?
No.
No?
I have mine at 4.
Yours is coming up. Well,
Yes.
best of luck.
Thanks.
Any highlights from the sessions you've attended so far?
Well, we will cover a bit. First, we will start broadly, Azure, IAC, infrastructure as code, and then we will really, take a deep dive into
Awesome.
Bicep. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. And for everybody on the live stream, thank you for watching or listening. Stay tuned. We're going to have a short break, and then we're going to be back with a few more panels today. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.